What's up guys and welcome back to the channel. Today we have a very special guest, Steve Brown from Trixter. The kid who started a rock band at 12 and is still rocking the stage over 40 years later. It was great sitting down with Steve. We talked about the early days of Trixter, the highs and lows of touring, his early life and concert experiences, stories from recording, his time stepping in with Def Leppard, and a whole lot more in this great conversation. Be sure to follow Steve and Trixter's socials, they will be linked below, and let me know who you'd like to see on the show next time. Enjoy the interview. What's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and today on the show we have Steve Brown of Trixter. How you doing, man?
Doing great, brother. Thanks for having me on, and good morning, mate.
Good morning, mate. And as the cover says, the kid who started a rock band at 12 and now is still ruling the stage 40 years later. Not only that, man, you're a producer, you've worked with some great people, like you filled in for Def Leppard, worked on the Ace Frehley album, you know, Motor City, what's that about Motor City?
Motor Fist.
Yeah, with Ted Polly and that, and you've got your own guitar company. I can see the guitar in the background, man. You've done so much, and yeah, you've done so much, man. And like I said, it's an honor to have you on here.
Well, thanks. And everybody out there in the worldwide intraweb rock world, Steve Brown is here, man. Love it.
Yeah. Now, you're bringing Trixter to Australia for the first time. That must be amazing for you, man.
It is. I got to be honest with you. It's a dream come true, you know. I remember 1980 when Kiss went over to Australia for the first time, and I remember, you know, Eric Carr joined the band, and I remember hearing it and seeing those news reports and seeing some of the shows that they did. So it's again, it's one of those bucket list things that you go as a musician. You know, I've been to Japan a couple times. That was always, you know, that was always the top because, you know, as a kid, you know, of course, Cheap Trick live at Budokan, you know, I remember the Van Halen when the Van Halen went over there in 1978. So to finally, what do you say, almost 42 years later, yeah. Trixter being a national act, that we're finally coming to Australia. You know, Dusty, the dreams always keep coming true, you know, and that's one of the things I tell the new fans and the old fans, that no matter what age it is, always look to achieve something. And that great things are on the horizon, you know, whether it's for you with your media company and all the things you're involved with, or anybody else who's out there watching it. I'm going to be 56 years old in July. And for me, I'm still looking forward. You know, like I tell PJ all the time, the first 50 years of our lives were just a warm up. So this is definitely one for the record books. PJ's been over a couple times. Yeah. So he's telling me, dude, you're going to love it, you know. And I just can't wait, and especially coming over with our good friends, you know, Stevie Rochelle and Lorraine Lewis, who I'm producing and writing her new record with her. It makes it even that much more special.
What are you looking to do here, man, besides obviously playing and rocking the stage at 3 states, like at Sydney on the 26th, Melbourne on the 27th, and then Brisbane on the 28th? What else are you looking to do? Because I know PJ wants to, you know, go see some koala bears, as he told me. What do you want to do?
Well, I want to do that too, man. Yeah, I mean, you know, I know we have limited time, and, you know, first and foremost, it's putting on a great show. So, you know, I got to be careful, always taking care of the voice and making sure you know, we're in tip-top shape. PJ as well. He can't have too many Foster's lagers, if you know what I mean. I don't drink anymore, so that's off the table. But I'm looking forward to everything, man. I just can't, you know, again, brother, Dusty, for me, this has been, you know, a lifelong journey to finally get there. So whatever you guys want to take me, say, Steve, you got to do this. Let me know what I got to see. You know, I mean, of course, the koala bears. I told PJ, we got to have a Vegemite sandwich.
Man, there's specific ways that people do Vegemite sandwiches. I see these YouTubers, when they get it, they just put Vegemite straight on it. It's not how you do it. You have to have butter, toast it lightly. Come on.
All right, well, let's do it, man. I can't wait. I'm a foodie, so even though everybody tells me you're not going to like it, I don't give a shit. I'm going to Australia. I want to try it. I remember the first time we went to Japan, and I never had sushi before. And after the last show, we went to this underground sushi bar, and the late great tour manager, T-Boy, Todd Compascore, he ordered, and me and him were the only two guys eating. We had like 5 trays of sushi, and it was just total overindulgence, but it was the greatest experience of my life. So whatever we should eat in Australia, what do they say? Put another shrimp on the barbie, mate. Let's do it. I can't wait, man. And hopefully, I mean, my biggest passion in life besides music is, I'm a big outdoor, I love surfing and I love the beach. So, and great white sharks. So I'm hoping we have a little bit of time. I don't know where we're going to be, but you could probably tell me if there's somewhere where we could go to possibly get out on a boat and see great white sharks. That would be the ultimate.
Man, I'm sure there's a few places I have in mind. I'm sure I'll be happy to tell you. And we'll have to do a Australia food review. Just get a bunch of Australia snacks and let you and PJ eat them and see what you rate them.
Can't wait, man.
Man, and what can these Australia fans, because we're seeing you for the first time, what can we expect from these shows?
Well, I think you're going to get a high energy rock show. What we try to do, PJ and I and Ben, our drummer, is what we do is we call what we're doing lately the spirit of 1989, because even though it's 2026, we still have the attitude and the spirit like it's 1989. Though my hair doesn't go down long anymore, it still goes up high. So we still count as a hair band to some degree. And don't worry, kids, no animals will harm making this hair. And but it's a great show, man. We're doing everything. We do songs from all of our records. PJ and I are singing everything. I've pretty much taken over the lead vocal helm as well as playing guitar. And we try to do, what I say is Trixter now is everything that we were and something brand new, because we're a trio now. And one of the biggest compliments we get when people see us lately is they go, wow, I can't believe the sound that you guys have being a three-piece. And also not using any backing tracks, not like there's anything wrong with that, but it's three musicians up there singing and playing and recreating a lot of these great vocals and guitar parts simultaneously while putting on a high energy rock show. So we take great pride in it, and we work real hard, man. One thing I could say, at 55 years old, I still have a 28-inch waist. So I get still fit in those tight pants, same as PJ. So we try to look our best and sound our best. And I think Stevie, from Tough, and Lorraine, it's the same attitude. I know they're using an Australian band over there. And I just know everybody that comes, you're going to get a rock and roll night that you'll never forget. That's for sure.
Hell yeah, it sounds like just a hair metal invasion down under.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you mentioned that, being in a three-piece band, you were obviously a four-piece band. How did you adapt to being a three-piece band? Was that hard, or did it just come naturally?
Well, it came out of necessity, really. We had the implosion of the original lineup with back in 2017, and after putting the band back together in 2008, and then coming back out in a 9-year period, we made two great records, New Audio Machine and Human Era, and we were going up the ladder. We were playing more and more. We were playing a lot with Warrant Firehouse and Dokken and Slaughter and all of our friends and Brett Michaels, and building this thing up. And then the other guys decided it was time to try to sink the ship again, which was a bummer. And PJ and I, again, as always, because him and I have been, he's my best friend in the world, he's my brother, we've been playing together for almost 38 years now. And we like back in the early 90s when Trixter got taken out by the grunge era, PJ and I just looked at each other and said, well, what are we going to do? And I said, well, it's my band. I'm not losing my band. And PJ was like, you're damn right. So we just carried on, and we brought Ben in, and we started, in like 2021, I think it was we started doing acoustic shows, doing this Trixter acoustic thing just to kind of test the waters. And the response was great. And for me, it was really great because it was the first time that I really sang a full set, and I don't know if a lot of people know, but I've been a singer in Trixter since day one. All those songs, I wrote them, recorded a demo with me singing, and I would send it to Pete and say, learn this and add your own thing and make it your own. So you know, Richie Sambora, I can thank for that because he was the guy who, encouraged me, and he was my biggest influence when I saw him with Bon Jovi in 1985 when they were on opening for Rat. I saw him and I was like, that guy is an incredible singer, besides being an incredible guitar player. And that was the moment that I knew I had to step up my game. And so I was always that role. And, on the debut album, that's me on all the background vocals with some help from some other people. But, On and On, the last song on the record that we still do to this day, that's me singing the first verse and chorus.
Oh, wow.
So if anybody has any doubts of, me not ever being a singer, I was always a singer in Trixter. And it was very much like what Richie Sambora did with Bon Jovi, with John, to where he would do the high harmonies, and also his vocals are all those background vocals, those stacks. His voice is the most prominent one, and that's the same thing with Trixter. So, we're real proud of that. And, you do what you can. Look, man, there are very few bands in this day and age that are all original. We all know that as we get older, people's lives change, and I hold no grudges against Pete, for not wanting to do it. He just doesn't want to do it anymore. Doesn't like to travel. It's hard, man. It's not for everybody. So, but all I can say is we are having the time of our lives, and ever since over the last couple of years, we've been doing these, what I said before, these Spirit of 1989 tours with Enough's Enough, Pretty Boy Floyd, and Band Inc., and Christian Shields, and all these great friends of ours, Charlie Bonnet, all these friends that we're bringing in to do these shows with us. It's just been so much fun, because PJ's out there a lot more than me as far as doing the touring thing, because he plays with Fozzy.
Yeah.
So and again, we haven't done a Trixter tour since the 90s, since the mid 90s. So 2 years ago, we went out and did this first 3.5 week run just to test the waters, if you will. And it was a big success. And on so many levels, not just as far as playing that amount of shows, but to be able to sing 5 shows in a row or 4 shows in a row. It was a huge undertaking and a mental thing for me. And every week I would go, wow, we did this. And I'm getting, my vocals are getting stronger and stronger. And our show was getting stronger and stronger. And again, that's all we try to do, man. The most important thing, and I think I learned this from my mom and dad, my dad in particular. He always says, try your best, do your best to be your best. And that's kind of our motto. PJ and I have always done that, where we just try to be the best band we can be. And right now, this is the best version of Trixter we can possibly be. And I think the Australian fans, and we want to thank Silverback Touring, Danny, for bringing us over. They're going to get a phenomenal show. And I think we're going to surprise a lot of people, and we're going to have a great time doing it.
Oh man, we're ready, and it feels like only last week the new year just came around. It's already February, so it's next month, literally the show. It's going to come around just like that.
Can't wait.
Man, and you're talking about longevity with bands and original members. You've seen it all. What keeps a band together in your eyes? What?
I think, the most important thing is the love of doing it, the love of the music and the love of doing it. But, the X factor, I think, is you all have to get along. It's the personality thing, and that was one of the reasons, when I got asked to do the Def Leppard filling in for Vivian in 2013, Phil brought me in because Phil's like my older brother. We've been best friends and brothers since 1988. We became fast friends, and it's just gone years and years to where we're like family. So, I've been around those guys for so long. It's not, getting on stage is the easy part, that hour, 2 hours that you have to play. It's the other, 16 hours that you're together, whether it's traveling or doing this. Can you get along and be in a dressing room with somebody? So that, that's it. But, for PJ and I, it's really simple. We have spent more time together with each other in the last, 3 decades than with anybody else. We never stopped playing with each other in different bands, whether it's with Trixter, or in the 90s, we had a cover band that we played together 5 nights a week. So it's just a way of life for us. I don't really, I can't think of any other way to describe it. But, most important thing though, honestly, for PJ and I, we still love doing what we do and getting out playing Trickster. Look, for me, this is my baby since 1984. And building this band and continuing it, I still get the thrill of my life by playing these songs, playing the songs that I wrote and that resonated with people. And we sold millions of records and streams and videos and fans all over the world. We're blessed beyond belief, and we never, ever take that for granted. So to have a new adventure like this after all these years, and we're finally coming to Australia, I can't tell you how much this means to me personally.
Was there any point in the early 90s and late 80s when you started to rise? Was there any opportunities to come here, or were you just focused on touring the US?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, we had the management who their mentality was, look, you have to tour. When you have success, the US was our biggest market. We had offers to go to Europe and maybe even go to Australia. I don't even know. But, it was kind of the mindset where we weren't big enough to where our record label was going to maybe write a check at that point for $500,000 so we could do a full proper tour. And those are things that some other bands, they get those opportunities. One thing I will tell you was during the Here cycle, on the second album, we had an opportunity to go out with Bon Jovi on the Keep the Faith tour in Europe, playing stadiums. But it was what they call a buy-on, and back then I think it was $150,000. It was called a marketing money, where you pay, and our record label wouldn't do it, and we didn't have that kind of money. So, and sadly, I think that was a huge missed opportunity for us, because the Here record was well received, better received over in Europe than it was here in America, because grunge had taken over America, but it hadn't taken over Europe yet. So Here was doing really well all, overseas. And so, but sadly, MCA Universal didn't feel like it was worth it for them to spend $150,000 to send us over to open for Bon Jovi. I think, again, it would have been a game changer for us, because we would have gained those fans. But that's neither here nor there.
Didn't you speaking of touring, like, you missed that opportunity, but didn't you tour with Kiss shortly after, or was that before?
That was before.
Okay.
Yeah, that was right around that time. But yeah, that was a dream come true. Kiss and Van Halen were the reasons that I started. And as you can see around my studio, there's tons of Kiss and Van Halen memorabilia. Those two bands were the reasons I started playing guitar. So to tour with Kiss, it was a dream come true. I'll never forget when we were in LA finishing the Here album, and I was in my hotel room, me and PJ, and I was cooking us dinner. Funny thing, because we had these efficiency, and I was making us dinner, and I got a call from our manager, and he's like, dude, we just got the call. You're going to go on tour with Kiss on the Revenge tour, arenas around America. And it was like, man, here we are making the best record of our lives. We're in LA and Hollywood, living our rock and roll dreams, and we get this phone call. And I remember not telling PJ, and I said, dude, I told our manager, Joel, I said, Joel, you got to tell PJ, let me get my video camera. I got my video camera out, and I said, get on the phone with PJ and tell him what's up. And I hit play on my camera, and he was like, what? We're going out on tour with Kiss? It was one of the greatest moments of our lives, and, doing that tour, it was a little bit tough. It was awesome, but it was a tough time for even a band like Kiss to tour. Because again, it was the height of grunge and Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains mania. But we still had an incredible tour, and it was a dream come true to be out there with Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, Bruce and Eric Singer.
Your idols.
Again, nothing. Times we'll never forget.
those are your idols, man. You must have been stoked.
Yeah.
A lot of people would want to play with Kiss, and they never had the opportunity, but you did it. Not only that, like you said, you're a big fan of Eddie Van Halen. You were good friends with Eddie, and then you get
Yeah.
to work on Ace's record. You've had a really good rock and roll life so far, man. And it's only going to get better, like you said. You're just going to keep growing, and do more things they haven't done, like coming down here. So you're just checking things off bit by bit.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think the work speaks for itself, and you know, I just try to do the best I can, and my work ethic, I think, is unparalleled. I mean, I think that's the one thing, and attest to, I will outwork anybody when it comes to making music, and everything I do, no matter what I do when I'm producing, whether it's producing Ace or producing Trixter, or working with Lorraine, or working with a young artist, a baby band that no one knows. I put the same amount of time into it. You know, though I do get paid a little bit of money, by the time I get done making these records for all the effort and time I put in on my own, I wind up, if I would add up the hours, it would be a losing proposition. You know, but at the end of the day, like I tell every artist that comes in here or whether I work with them, I say, like I did with Ace, the first day we worked together, and I tell everybody this, I promise you, if we work together, we will make the best music that we possibly can, and it will be as good, if not better, than anything you've ever done. And that's my job. And that's the same thing with the, new Trickster stuff we're working on. I can't wait for the world to hear it. I know it's taken a long time, but people, I honestly believe you're going to be blown away by the new stuff when you hear what PJ and I are working on.
What can you tell us about the new album? Like you said, people are waiting and waiting. But is there anything you can tell
Well,
us?
I can tell you that it's 75% done. I have, probably 15 or 16 songs, 75% done. PJ hasn't put his bass on it yet, but I've said in numerous interviews, and PJ's probably said the same thing. We've been working on this documentary called One in a Million, and it's not a Trickster documentary, but of course, it's a lot of Trickster involved. But it's the story of me and PJ as journeyman musicians, and the fact that we've been playing together for so many years, but yet at the same time, we do numerous things apart from each other. But the one constant, of course, is Trickster, and that we always come back together and do things. And then, PJ is also with records that I produce, like on the Ace record, anytime I need a bass player, he's my first call because, I've said this, and I think people who played with PJ, they know he's as good as anybody on the planet. I call him Hugh McDonald Jr. because when I send him a song, like when I send him 10,000 volts from Ace's record, I didn't have to tell him what to play. He knows, and we have that unspoken mental musical telepathy that we don't even have to say anything to each other. We both know what to do. And that's all I can say. So, that's it. But I'm so excited. I went back to the archives like I've done, some of the old songs that we never released. We have one song that's been a long time fan favorite song, Just Once Again, that I don't know why it never made the first record because, it's a phenomenal song. It was back in 1988 when we wrote it. And it's still, so we did a new version of it. It's I did a 1 in a million sort of spin on it. It's got a little bit of a bigger production than the original, but that's one of the gems, because we always resurrect some of the old songs that never, for some reason, just because it didn't make the first album didn't mean it wasn't a great song, so we got that, but, a lot of other great songs and just, I can't wait to finally finish it. But the reason it's taking so long is because we want the documentary and the record to coincide with each other. So all I can say is, fans, friends, just be patient. It's going to be well worth the wait.
Patience is key, man. We're all
Of
looking forward to
course.
it. And yeah,
Yep.
I talked to PJ about that documentary. I'm looking forward to seeing that as well. I love those band documentaries, looking inside their lives and seeing what they think and what goes through their mind.
Yeah, man, it's something special. I'm really, and what's really cool about it, the director and the co-producer and editor were guys that I grew up with, and me and PJ grew up with, but guys that grew up in my town. The one guy, Alex Costino, who's the director, he's actually working on the Toby Keith documentary right now. He's worked for MTV and VH1 for years. He did the Aerosmith Behind the Music back in the day. And most recently, he just did the Wolfgang Van Halen documentary.
Awesome.
That was on that documentary, but the Behind the Music that came out about last year, I think it was.
Yeah.
So he grew up in Paramus with me. He saw Trixter before we were the Trixter that everybody knew. And the editor on it, who's also, I would say, a producer, Dave Malone, is somebody I've known since we were in third grade together. You know, kind of right when I started playing guitar is when I met Dave. And I actually used to give Dave guitar lessons. And he's gone on to be, he's an incredible talent, video director. He's actually been doing some video content for my Bon Jovi tribute band, Always Jovi. But it's really special. And I think the fans are going to be, it's a really incredible story, which a lot of people know, but you're going to see things that you've never seen before and hear, you know, because there's definitely some, you know, some real, the bright side and the dark side of our lives together.
I think it's good to incorporate the highs and lows of someone's personal life, especially such a big influence on many people. And we were just talking about the grunge scene before. I just wanted to quickly touch on that. Did you feel that shift? When did you feel that shift coming, that grunge was coming and then the hair was going?
Well, felt the shift. Yeah, the hard part for us, and I think for me in 1992 was we had just renegotiated a huge record deal with MCA Records to do the Here record after the success of the debut. And we were making, our dream record. We were working with Jim Barton, Queensryche and Rush's producer, engineer. We were recording at the best studios in New York and LA. We were living a total rock star life. We had money in the bank and we were, all these great things were happening. And when you're in that world, where you're kind of insulated, you don't really know what's going on around you. And before you know it, all of a sudden, this band Nirvana came out and they took over the world. And then Pearl Jam is on the cover of Time magazine. But still, it wasn't until the Here record was released, we went out on tour with Kiss, and it was that thing. We made the first single was Road of a Thousand Dreams. We made a cool video for it. And what was great about the video was Bon Jovi was recording. It was in the A&M studios, and Bon Jovi was recording at A&M studios, and we shot our video right next door. So those guys were next door. I remember seeing Bob Rock and talking to Richie, and it was like, hey man, yeah, great, so great. We're making this. They're making Keep the Faith. We're doing Here. We're recording in studios. It was awesome. Dude, we each of us had a rental Mustang GT, and we would race down Sunset Strip, going to different studios, hanging out at the Rainbow every night. I'll never forget PJ and I going to the Rainbow and hanging out with Lemmy, playing Miss Pac-Man, and Lemmy drinking with Lemmy, and Lemmy going, oh, Trixter guys, what's happening, man? What you doing? Oh, we're telling him, oh, Lem, we're working on our new record, and oh, that's great, man. People think I'm a heavy metal guy, but I'm really a blues singer. He starts singing, he starts going, woo! He starts singing blues and shit. While we're sitting at this sit-down Miss Pac-Man thing at the Rainbow with Lemmy. PJ and I just looked at each other going, like, can you fucking believe this, man? But again, I have to tell all these stories because,
no, man.
People tell me, dude, you got to save that shit for your book. Or say, fuck that. I'm giving it to you, Dusty. Don't worry about it. But it wasn't until, so we made this video, the record came out, we're on the Kiss tour, and it was every day we'd be calling our manager, dude, when's MTV going to add the video? Next week. They're going to add it next week. It was about 3 weeks into the Kiss tour, and we finally got word, guys, MTV is not going to play your video. And that was, for me, that was finally the sort of like, oh, wow, this is going to be a tough this is going to be a tough road. And sure enough, it was. You know, we did some shows on the Kiss tour where, you know, we've been playing a year and a half earlier. We were out on tour with the Scorpions, and there was 22,000 people at this arena going nuts. And the next, a year and a half later, we're playing that same arena, and there's 1,500 people. And you're going, holy shit, you know, and that was it, man. And we knew that this was going to be a long, long couple months of touring for us. But we still had an incredible time. The Kiss camp was so gracious to us. You know, I think we all knew the writing was on the wall, and it was, man, you know, get your boots on because we're going to be stepping into swampy waters. And that's what we did.
After, you know, playing sold out stadiums with the other bands, and now when you were touring with Kiss and seeing only like 1,500 people, or 15,000, sorry, must have been pretty hard, you know. What was going through your mind mentally and the band's mind?
Well, I mean, you know, again, we're all fairly positive people. I mean, I'm always, you know, the glass is always half full. I'm let's go. This is going to happen. Don't worry, man. The next single, we're going to get it, you know, but not realizing that you're fighting for life. No pun intended at that point. But, you know, we still, like I said, man, we still had a great time. We being in a band with Trixter, we loved to laugh, and we knew how to laugh. We knew how to party, you know, and have fun. We make the best of any situation, and that's what we did. We wound up, you know, when a lot of bands would have packed up everything and went home, we wound up on the Here record. We still wound up touring for a good 10 months, you know, well into 1993. And then, you know, I bought my house and built this studio. And then we recorded the Undercovers record, and we went out on the road for another 6 months with that in 94 and 95. And by that time, dude, that was when we knew that it was time to move on. And at least what we did is we pressed pause. And, you know, and PJ and I went on to start some other bands, Throwing Rocks, Soaked, 40-Foot Ringo. And then from there, you know, we just kept, you know, making music, you know, while other guys in the band went and got day jobs. PJ and I were like, dude, we're musicians. This is what we do. Whether we're playing stadiums or we're playing a fucking bar for 20 people, we're going to play music. And that's what we have always done.
Exactly.
That's the sign. That's a real musician.
Exactly. I feel like you and PJ are the type of band who, you know, don't care if it's 100 people, 1,000 people, or 10 people. You're still going to put on a great show like it's a full stadium to us.
Yeah, I mean, that's the truth. I mean, you know, doing the Def Leppard thing, you know, since 2013 through, you know, in the 2021 during the stadium tour, you know, when I would do shows with them, like in 2018, filling in for Phil Collin, I played those 3 shows, playing stadiums, sold out arenas, Journey, Def Leppard tour. 4 days later, I'm back down at my Jersey Shore bar, the Beachcomber, playing on a Monday night for 20 people. You know, I mean, it doesn't matter. This is what I do. And what, you know, look, the reality is when you're a musician and you have to make money all the time, these are what you got to do. You either take a gig or you don't make money, you know? And, you know, I wish I could say I had millions of dollars in the bank, but that's not the case. So that's why. But I love to play live. So whether it's playing in front of 47,000 people with Def Leppard at Wembley Stadium, well, that was 90,000. Or, like you said, playing to 20 people at a bar in Seaside Heights, New Jersey, I'm still a happy guy.
And I feel like all the money you make, personally, what I see, you just go straight back into the music, like your guitars, recording. I feel like that's where it goes.
I got a family to support,
yeah.
So yes.
Yeah.
Dude, luckily my house is paid for. You know, I'm at a good point in my life. But, you know, again, man, it's still, I wake up every day and I come down here when I'm home and I'm working. And there's multiple projects. You know, luckily I've become very, very, very good at multitasking.
It's awesome to hear, man. And that New Jersey scene, I don't know much about it. What was that like, you know, when you started Trixter? What were the key clubs, the key places to play?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
What
I
were
mean,
those?
it was, growing up in the 70s and 80s, was a magical time. And, with the beginning of MTV, and that was what it was, man. So when I started Trickster, it was very much I wanted to be Kiss, Van Halen, Cheap Trick, Def Leppard, Bon Jovi, Motley Crue, Rat, all rolled up into one.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what Trickster was. We were a product of our influences. Quiet Riot, too, which was I don't think I ever give them enough credit. That Metal Health was such a huge record at that time in '83, and um, such a big influence as well.
Mm.
But, you know, that was it, man. And it was, the first gigs we did where, we did the first show was at our band shell in Paramus, New Jersey, in front of all in summertime concert series. And it was magic. It's hard to believe that was 42 years ago, almost 42 years ago. But, and from there it was just building and, the rock scene, the 80s hard rock scene. And for somebody like you who, 80s metalhead, your social media, I don't think the 80s hard rock, the hair metal, the big rock, as David Lee Roth used to call it, it doesn't get enough credit. And one thing I recently realized is I don't think there's any other genre of music that had a longer run of success than the 80s hard rock. If you look at it from 1980 to 1990, that's 10 years. Tell me one other genre of music that has had a lasting run like that. I don't think there's any. Grunge was 4 years at best because by 4 years, most of the big guys were dead already, and disco, of course, which I love, and I love grunge too. I loved a lot of those bands. The 60s pop, nothing had a 10-year run where it was so monumental. And I think that plays into the reason why the 80s bands still to this day command stadiums like Def Leppard, like Motley Crue. Let's hope Johnny Bon Jovi is able to get out this summer, and hopefully his voice holds up. I mean, nobody wants to see him succeed more than I do. Well, I think he does, but everybody around here, we're pulling for him. But so that was it, and I wanted to bring that point home because lately when I've been doing interviews, I've been saying that, and I think it resonates. And I think that's the reason why people still love to come out and see bands like Trixter and bands like Warrant and bands like Slaughter and, and all of our friends that are still out there doing it.
Mm. And yeah, you're right. I can't.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're right.
Getting back to your thing. So it was a magical time because when Bon Jovi was starting to go up the ladder, when the 7800 went gold, we were there that night when they got their gold records opening up for Rat. And again, that show was a life changer for me because that was when Bon Jovi became our biggest influence. Seeing them get their gold records, Pete and I looked at each other and go, if they can do it, we can do it. And again, seeing John at that time, he was the fucking best looking rock star, had the best hair. He could still sing great. He was like to me, he was like a cross between David Lee Roth and, Bryan Adams and Steve Perry. Like he had this weird, he had the gravel in his voice, yet he could still sing high. But seeing the band have so much fun, they had a lot of, they had a little bit of the Van Halen thing in it and that they were going on, with the dress and they're, smiling. Wow, what a band that could smile. And that's what we did with Trixter. It was always, man, for me, all I wanted to be was Eddie Van Halen. So it was smiling, having fun. Give me another beer. Even though I'm underage, I would still drink beer because I wanted to be like Eddie Van Halen.
Yeah.
But Bon Jovi was that. So what happened was we made our first Trixter demo tape in 1986, the Just Having Fun one that people like to call You Got Me Running, Take the Chance, Love Ain't No Game, which turned into Play Rough, Top of the World, and Too Hot. And before Slippery When Wet came out, John was doing this radio interview at the Hard Rock Cafe in New York. And Pete had this idea where, I got to get in there and get John, our demo tape and our press kit, which was basically just a picture and a handwritten bio. And it had Pete's hotline, which was his home phone number with an answering machine that became the Trixter hotline. And he ran in and gave John our demo tape. And a week later, John called us.
Oh, wow.
And he said, man, I listened to your tape. I think you guys got a lot of potential. Keep it up. Keep sending stuff to, the office, which was Doc McGee's office in New York City. And that's what I would do. Anytime I'd write a new set of songs, I'd send it. And John would call me. And, it's funny because he would always call when I was never home. It was like he fucking knew. He's like, I'm just going to call when the answering machine's on. And so then what had happened was it's the Slippery When Wet effect. A couple weeks later, Slippery When Wet came out, and all of a sudden, the music business was obsessed with New Jersey and the New Jersey bands. And who was next in line? Skid Row, because John was producing them and took them under the wing. John and Richie and Doc McGee and Scott McGee managed them. And then from there, we became friends with the Skid Row guys through me, through John. John introduced us, and John said, take care of Steve and the Trixter guys, and Snake and Rachel became like big brothers to us. And there was another guy, Jack Ponte, who's a famous songwriter producer from New Jersey, who was in the band The Rest with John. He took an interest in me and the Trixter guys and helped us write some songs and get the ball rolling. And next thing you know, we got a record deal. And we were playing, and again, it was very organic because it's like the old days where if you become the biggest band in your area and start selling out without even having to call record companies, they know. They got the pulse, and they knew all of a sudden, here's this band from New Jersey, from northern New Jersey, because the Skid Row guys and Bon Jovi, they were from what we call central New Jersey. Okay. They were from exit 135 off the Garden State Parkway. We were from northern Jersey, which was up by New York State, kind of where like the Anthrax guys were from. We were from that area where it was more. And also one of our heroes was, the band Stars, Richie Rano and Joe Doobie. They were northern New Jersey guys. And Joe Lynn Turner from Rainbow. He lived in the next town over from us. So that was our scene, exit 161 off the Parkway. And the next thing you know, we were part of that scene, and we got a record deal. And we were playing clubs like the China Club and Studio One, and then we would play Staten Island. There was a great place called Billy O's, and these were all sort of all ages, where if you were, I guess 16 or older, or even all ages, you could come. And we would do these Sunday night showcases, these shows, and there were people everywhere. And it was, for Trixter, look, it's no secret back in the day, all the most beautiful girls would come to our show, and we know the old secret and the old saying, where there's beautiful women, there's going to be guys. So it was like a great thing, and it was a magical time, dude. Growing up, I wish you could time travel back to 1986 and 1987, because it was just so much fun. It was innocent. It was before we all had these phones that took over our lives. We used to have to sit. I remember when I was a kid, watching MTV, I would sit for 6 hours sometimes to wait to see those those live Van Halen videos, hear about it later, Unchained, So This Is Love, and just sit there. And what I did that, and subconsciously, that's how I learned how to write songs, because I became a fan of all these great, like sort of what they call new wave bands, but they all had great songs, bands like Talk Talk, Duran Duran, of course. I always loved Duran Duran, and I always knew that they had great songs. They were great pop songs. I loved Bryan Adams. I loved Aldo Nova. When you see Pat Benatar, the Go-Go's, Adam Ant, all this music that you would see waiting for Def Leppard, waiting for Bon Jovi, waiting for Van Halen. And then subconsciously, that's what taught me how to write songs.
Wow. And yeah, I know I get this all the time. I wish I could travel back to that time. I feel like I'd have a ball, especially. But honestly, I'm here now. I'm loving it. So I still get to see the people I love and the bands I love. And you touched on being mates with the Skid Row guys, and you went to tour with them also. correct?
Yeah, well, we never know. We never toured with Skid Row. We've done shows with them later on, but we opened for Skid Row. So John set that up to where we did shows with them before Sebastian was in the band, when they had the original singer, Matt Fallon. We actually have some video from one of the shows we did at that place, Billy O's in Staten Island. And I'll never forget, John told Snake, he goes, make sure those guys get a soundtrack. And Snake was like, okay, John, okay, definitely. But it was really cool. And, the whole Jersey Syndicate brotherly love thing was very much true. It was very much different than the Sunset Strip scene where, all bands were like fighting with each other to get space on the fucking, on the telephone pole for their flyers. We were all so cool with each other. And again, man, I wouldn't be here had it not been for, like John and Richie, the Bon Jovi guys, and Dave and the Skid Row dudes. And, they were a massive, massive help for us.
Yeah, you would say like the Sunset Strip. I've heard stories from other guys I've interviewed, the things they did, just tearing down the old posters, put theirs, and then the next day their posters are gone, so they put back up. It's quite funny to hear that's how you bring people in.
Dog eat dog.
And, touring with those guys, and then you obviously toured with Striper. Well, not toured, like played shows with and open for with Striper, Kicks, all those bands who've had a bit more experience playing live. What was the biggest thing you learned from those guys?
I mean, we learned stuff from everybody, but, look, we just learned, our motto was, let's go out and just be the best Trixter that we can be and put on the best show. And that's all we tried to do. And we learned, we would learn things about, more technical stuff, like how it works. So, our first couple tours, we went out on tour with Striper, September of 1990. They were on the Against the Law tour. Then we went out with Don Dokken solo, and we were building our live show, putting it together. And then it was 5 months later that we finally got to do our first arena shows with Poison. And that was the dream all along, Dusty. It was never, back in the day, we never gave a shit about like making videos or even making an album. All we ever wanted to do was play arenas like Van Halen, like Kiss, like Def Leppard, like Bon Jovi. That's all we wanted to do. So finally, we got the call to open up for Poison, and we played our first arena show, and I kid you not, it was flawless. It was God was looking down, and he said, Trixter boys, this is your time. You're going to put on, because playing arena shows, playing your first one, a lot can go wrong, but we had prepared so many years and gotten ready for that moment that we were ready, and we answered the call and we crushed it in front of 10,000 people. And that was the beginning of it. And then 2 weeks later, we were out on tour with the Scorpions on the Crazy World Tour. And that was our go around North America, playing every major arena in America and Canada for the first time. A lot of them sold out. We did multiple nights in many arenas around the country. And the Scorpions were legends to us, and they became friends. And still to this day, when we see them, they bring us into a dressing room. Oh, Trixter boys, it's incredible. But that was it. It was that was the real truth, man. It was never about making videos and making records. It was only about playing arenas and stadiums. And we were blessed that we got to do that.
And I feel like that's a whole interview itself, that just those tours, I feel like there's so many crazy stories, and I feel like,
well, I'm sure you heard the stories about the Blood, Sweat, and Beers, the Warrant Trixter Firehouse tour. That was by far, there's only so much we could ever say in public about that tour, but it was fun times 1,000.
Yeah, that tour looks like it was killer, especially. Yeah, that's an interview for itself, that one, and I feel like some of the stories you probably couldn't say. But man, we'll jump into some Q&A questions. I know you've got to go, but so I've written them down. So these are from some fans that I posted a story last night, and some fans put their question down, and I've had some people message me, some Trixter fans and some Aussie fans who want to hear some questions answered. So the first one is, in your opinion, what is the most underrated Trixter song?
Heart of Steel. for
Mo-
sure.
Most fun song to play live back then and now?
I think I'm gonna go with Rockin' Horse.
Any reason why?
Just because it's such a high energy song, and it always when we wrote it and when we did the first demo of it, we all looked at each other and go, this is gonna crush live. This is gonna be," and it's we played it every show since since we released here. We've always played Rockin' Horse, and it's just such a we've done it at the beginning of the show, and now we're doing it more towards the end, and it's really an uplifting song and just so much fun, classic. You can't go wrong with that AC/DC style groove with, the guitar stuff and the vocals. It's party central.
And playing that song, you hear the fans singing back, that song to you must feel great. I mean, it's one of my favorite songs to watch live, back in the day.
Yeah.
One riff you love playing, is it the Rockin' Horse song, or is there a different riff you love playing? We'll do outside any riff, not just Trixter.
Yeah, one of my favorite riffs is "Bad Girl." That's for sure one of my favorites, and that's one of the songs that's going to be in the set. PJ sings that one, and it's just I love it. That was another one, man. When immediately when I wrote that song and wrote that riff, it was like, yeah, this is what it's all about.
Man, it's going to be a killer show. You're going to be excited. I've got to wait a month now for it.
It is going to be killer. I promise you.
So, a song you wish you wrote, any band?
Song I wish I wrote. Well, I mean, what would Living on a Prayer, of course. Because I could tell you one thing, my house would be 10 times the size it is now if I wrote that song. But no, one of my favorite songs, one of the best, rock anthems ever created, ever written. So yeah, I guess I would go with Living on a Prayer.
I mean, it's killing still to this day. I swear everyone plays it. It's what, it got 2 billion views on YouTube alone? That's
2 billion streams, and the views and everything. Yeah, it's the check and the gift that keeps on giving.
It's like that Mariah Carey song every Christmas.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we all try to, you write those songs, but some of them just translate, I think it's Don't Stop Believing and Living on a Prayer are obviously the two, most famous and most streamed rock songs of all time,
Yeah, I can't think of any other song. I feel like there's some songs under it that definitely get streamed to this day a lot still. So, you got those Guns N' Roses songs, the ballads, and like 80s ballads, Skid Row, I Remember You.
For sure.
Yeah. One album that changed your life as a teenager, and I'm gonna say you can't pick any Van Halen or Kiss ones because you've already mentioned earlier that they changed your life. So what's one that people don't know that also influenced you?
I would say one of my biggest influences was back when I was a kid, my first guitar teacher and his band, and it was a band called Harlot, and my guitar teacher was this guy, Ross Barada, and the singer of the band Harlot was the late, great Ray Gillen from Badlands and Black Sabbath. And when I was a little kid, my best friend, who was my first drummer that I ever played with, he was the original drummer in Trixter, this guy, Mike Payne. Mike Payne used to cut the lawn of this guy, George Pagonis, and he was the drummer in Harlot. And he lived right across the street from Paramus High School. And these guys used to rehearse in the garage. And it was, for me, it was like being in a room with Van Halen, like being in a room with Dio, because they would play all these songs. They were one of the big cover bands in the Jersey, New York. Back in the 70s and 80s, the cover scene was massive in the tri-state area. Bands like Twisted Sister, Zebra, White Tiger, Harlot. These bands were making thousands of dollars a night. They had road crews. They would play 5 nights a week because the drinking age was 18. And so we would go in and watch these guys rehearse. And it was like, dude, it was 120 dBs. They literally had a full PA. And these guys drinking, smoking cigarettes. And there's their girlfriends, these hot girls. And I'm sitting there as an 11-year-old kid going like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. The impact, the influence, and the shot in my arm was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. I'm gonna start in a garage, and I guarantee within 5 years I'm gonna be playing arenas, and pretty much maybe 7 years later,
You got there eventually.
that's where I was playing arenas. And it was because of those guys. Ross Ferrata was, I had many great guitar teachers when I was a kid, but he was the one he looked like a dark version of John Sykes. If you can imagine John Sykes with dark, like black hair like me, that's what Ross was like. He was the coolest fucking dude. And Ray Gillen was he was such a great friend of ours, where we would play basketball with him and just watching him sing. Dude, I'll never forget being in there, watching him sing Burn and watching him sing Holy Diver back in 1983. It was fucking mind blowing.
Amazing vocalist, there's not many people they compare him to.
But it was, again, those are the influences, and they treated us so good, and they taught us things, and they taught us a lot of things, like how to open a Heineken beer on a road case. It was good. I'll never forget drinking, at 12 years old, having a beer with guys that are 21. It was pretty cool. You learn to grow up quick.
Yeah. Especially hanging around with those guys.
And that's what I try to do. I try to do the same thing with young bands that I work with. I try to give them solid advice. I don't drink anymore, but I give them real world advice.
The party time's over with the drinking.
Yeah, of course.
It's onto the waters. Last question. Aside from Eddie Van Halen and Ace Frehley, what is a big axe man that influenced your playing?
After those guys, I would definitely say the third biggest influence for me was Warren DeMartini. Warren and Richie Sambora kind of tied, just because that was at a time there was something about Warren's playing and Richie's playing that was different, and their solos were a little bit more thematic, that it just resonated with me. Randy Rhoads too. I mean, it was Ace and Eddie, and then Randy Rhoads was really the third. That was what really set me on the course. And then after that, it was, Warren DeMartini. But I got to give, if you're asking after Ace and Eddie, sorry, Randy Rhoads, of course.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of great guitarists. I mean, I feel like me and you can just list them off. Oh, that's awesome. Love that.
Yeah. But yeah, I was influenced, dude. I loved them all. Jakey Lee, Brad Gillis, Carlos Cavazo,
John Sykes, as you said
George
before.
Lynch, Yngwie. When Yngwie came out, man, he was a total game changer. But yeah, I was obsessed with it. But then, after seeing Richie Sambora in '85 with Bon Jovi, when I told you when I became that switch, I became more in tune with singers. So then after that, I became really into Steve Lukather, who Luke is a good friend of mine, and John Sykes, of course. When Blue Murder, and seeing him sing and play guitar, that was an incredible thing. And Phil Collin, of course, Phil was a huge influence, because he when we became friends, Photograph to me is one of the quintessential 80s best guitar solos. Simple to the point. It's got everything you need. Living on a Prayer, Jump, and Photograph are pretty much the textbook melodic rock, hard rock guitar solos.
Catchy and memorable.
And if you kids ever get stuck, listen to those. And for the guitar players out there, I told numerous guitar students, people that whether I give them lessons or not, but they ask me for advice, like, how can I get better? I tell them 2 songs. If you can learn how to play I'm the One by Van Halen, learn the rhythm and the lead. If you can learn that and learn Crazy Train, the rhythm and the lead, That's pretty much all you need to know. If you can master that and then incorporate that into your guitar playing, you're gonna be fine.
That's awesome, Steve. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. This has been an awesome interview.
Thank you.
And I hope we can do it again. And hopefully we can do something when you're down here. I know you got a busy
Can't
schedule,
wait, man.
but we'll see. Yeah, where can everyone follow you and the band?
Tricksterrocks.com is, all things Trixter. Steve Brown Rocks, on all the social media platforms. Always Jovi, my brand new Bon Jovi tribute, which I hope you're going to be featuring on the 80s metal soon. And then SBS Guitars
Yep.
is, guitarfetish.com. And, the new line just launched. So, dude, all I can say is I'm just so blessed and I love what I do and get so excited about every aspect of this business. And I'm just so thankful to still be here rocking after all these years.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much, man. You're an awesome dude. And I hope to have you back on.
Yep. And I'll see you in about a month and a half.